Mar, incêndio, tempestade, inundação. Amazonas, sol no meio-dia. Vinho rádio sobre luz, fotografia. Mar, incêndio, tempestade, inundação. Amazonas.
IBA Champions Night Extravaganza in Dubai. We've got 8 bouts scheduled, boxers from 5 continents, world title fights, continental title fights, and from the IBA 3-round code, we've got world and Olympic champions all showcasing their skills in highly competitive affairs over the longer format of IBA professional boxing. Well, my name is Ronald McIntosh. I'll be one of your commentators for the IBA Champions Night Extravaganza, and alongside me, IBA Champions Night commentator and regular colleague as well, Andy Clark. And Andy, it's not an end-of-year extravaganza because we're promised something in Toulouse just before Christmas, but the end-of-year congress and everything that takes place around the event here in Dubai, just as it did last year, always special.
In it all week, so I'm very much looking forward to it.
Indeed, we've got cracking action all the way. We've got our MC, Aki Karim, up in the ring, ready to introduce the first pair of fighters. On the night, they'll be contesting the 80-kilogram African Continental title for the IBA in the Pro Series. This one could end early because both of them are dedicated knockout artists. So, Aki Karim, it's over to you to bring our first pair of fighters into the ring.
Thank you, Ron, and a warm welcome to you all. We're here at the Rocky Road Gym in Dubai for the official public workout for the IBA Champions Night, the big show coming your way on Friday evening, live from the Agenda Arena, not too very far from here. We have a blockbuster card for you. Championship bouts, one after another, culminating in 2 mouth-watering IBA professional world title bouts, all courtesy, of course, of the president of the IBA, Mr. Umar Kremlov. And this afternoon, we have the chance to watch all of our athletes in action with live commentary on IBA YouTube channel from Andy Scott and Ronald McIntosh, 2 respected broadcasters from the United Kingdom. And now at this time, let's bring in the first pair of boxers for their public workouts. So this contest will be 8 rounds of boxing for the IBA Professional African 80-kilogram Championship title. So let's welcome to the ring first, with an outstanding unbeaten record. 19 wins against no losses, with 17 of his wins coming by way of knockout. Presenting the WBO African Super Middleweight Champion from Namibia, the hard-hitting Paulinus Ndjolonimu.
So this is Paulinus Ndjolonimu from Namibia. Very, very good record he brings, 19 fights and 19 wins, 17 of those wins coming inside the distance. This is his first time fighting outside of Namibia, so that'll be an interesting experience for him.
Most certainly, and as he's just limbering up, you can see he's a tall, broad-shouldered, lean boxer at the 80-kilogram limit. But 19 fights, 19 wins, 17 of them early. But as you say, facing off against another knockout artist, and even though we expect fireworks or anticipate fireworks when 2 punches of that caliber face off in the boxing ring, it can often go the other way because they're so wary of making a mistake that could literally be lights out, that they can be standoffs and long periods of inactivity before somebody has the courage and the confidence to break the deadlock.
That can often happen. That can often happen because they're just a little bit, as you say, a bit wary of each other, and nobody wants to really make that fully committed move too soon. And always kind of interesting to see what fighters choose to do at the open workouts. They've got to weigh in tomorrow. They probably already trained today, or maybe they'll train tonight. You know, that would make sense given the time of night that they'll be fighting at. And some just have a little move around like he is. Some will do a bit more work. It's nice and air conditioned in here, so you'd have to get a bit of get your heart rate up to get a sweat on in here, wouldn't you? But yeah, maybe we'll see a few tricks, a bit of showboating from some of the fighters throughout the course of the afternoon. But I'm always interested to see exactly how much they choose to do.
Indeed, because as you suggest, they'll be on weight, they'll know what they have to do, they're experienced professionals now, they're not going to get any fitter at this stage, and equally they won't want to reveal too much to the opponent. So we were both at Wembley when Olympic champion Anthony Joshua fought off against the young sensation Daniel Dubois. And for his workout, what did Anthony Joshua do? He brought in all his kids from the Finchley Boxing Club, where he learned the trade, and it was very much a show out for them rather than he giving too much away to the man who was going to be in the opposite corner on fight night. So different approaches, but again, remember, it's going to be a long journey coming up all the way from Windhoek in Namibia to make his way here to Dubai. So just the opportunity to get the blood moving, the heart pumping. He'll embrace that, and as you can see, athletic, light-footed boxer, just pivoting and pirouetting on the canvas of the boxing ring. But his opponent is going to have to deal with that seemingly retractable reach which goes on forever.
He's pretty lean, isn't he? When you look at him, he's tall. I would say he probably makes 80 kilos relatively easily because he is quite slim. And as the record shows, though, he can absolutely crack. So I'm looking forward to see what happens when he lets his hands go for the first time. Because when you've got someone who's undefeated and they're used to winning like that, they just bring that confidence to the ring. And it's never generally too long before they show you something. Like we said, they may well just stand off each other and have a bit of a look at each other, but at the same time, you know, he's not going to die wondering for long, I don't think. Before too long, he'll let something go, let a big one go, because he's used to winning. He's used to hitting people clean and watching them go down. And the first time you do that and somebody doesn't, that could be quite a big moment.
Absolutely. Often referred to as the curse of the puncher. Looking at your gloves, well, why aren't these working tonight? Generally, I hit somebody on the chin, they fall over. Never more so than a man who's from the same, who fought in the same birthplace of his opponent, Patrick Mukala, tonight. George Foreman told me personally that's what happened to him when he fought Ali 50 years ago in the Rumble in the Jungle. Everybody that he hit laid waste to them. 30 undefeated in all his contests, all but 3 failed to make it to the final bell. And as you say, if he hits somebody having ended 17 of his 19 early, then it could be interesting to see. No stranger to the 12-round distance. He's been scheduled to go 12 on a few occasions during the course of his career. But he's got that archetypal puncher's physique. Broad shoulders, tiny waist. It's like a set of panniers spinning on a pivot if he plants that back foot and lets that right cross go. So again, they will have done all the hard work in camp leading up to this. So just want to ensure that everything keeps working and remains as optimally fluid as it should.
That's some quite impressive stretching he's doing there.
Most certainly.
As he was lying on his back. I think he's probably one of those fighters, given the knockout record, that he's got that kind of elasticity that punchers often have. Sometimes it's not muscles that make a puncher. We know that, but you get different types, don't you? You do get some big units like George Foreman, and you need the timing, and you need that element of relaxedness, because if you're too tight, then it's just not going to happen, is it? It won't work. But he's more your kind of long, loose, elastic kind of fighter who can maybe throw shots, heavy shots, without really winding up, and that's a very useful thing to have, that kind of rubbery quality where you can bounce off that back foot and let that right hand go. And often they'll end up travelling further than the opponent thinks they're going to, those punches, because it is almost like they're coming out on elastic and then just coming back in. So it's always good to see new fighters, isn't it? Because you never quite know what you're going to get. And I like this matchup. I like it a lot. You know, we see quite a lot of fighters from Namibia, don't we? Mm-hmm. More and more venturing outside of their homeland. I mean, you know, who could forget Julius Ndongo?
Indeed.
Knocking out Edward Trojanowski in 40 seconds in Moscow a few years ago on his way to a fight for undisputed with Terence Crawford. So, and with Congo as well, we got Martin Bakoli, Ilunga Makabu, it's an interesting one, this.
So, quick set of calisthenics completed by Ndjolonimu ahead of his African Continental title fight tomorrow at 80 kilograms.
Record 16 wins against just 2 defeats, 14 big wins coming by way of knockout, presenting a former All-Africa Super Middleweight champion from Mbuji Mai, Democratic Republic of Congo, Patrick Mukala.
So Patrick Mukala just shape-shifting his way up the steps and into the boxing ring. Born in DR Congo, resides in Johannesburg, South Africa. He too, in his first fight outside the continent, all but one of his contests in the country where he resides in South Africa, fought once in Botswana. But again, as Kareem, photographer extraordinaire and handler of so many fighters from the North African and French African region, just giving us a little pound here at our dai. But again, that is so typical of IBA Champions Night, Sandy, because as we've said, we've got fighters from 5 continents, boxers from all over the world, and this really does reflect the broad base that come in from the IBA Championship structure, be they continental events or world championships.
100%, and boxing is a global sport. It always has been a global sport, but we've kind of seen it a bit more in recent times, where the fulcrums that we've had for the sport are maybe just shifting a bit, because pro boxing has tended to be quite US-centric at times, quite UK-centric at times as well, but with the big cards going over to Riyadh, and they've taken them to LA and London as well. And you look at this area, the kind of catchment area of Central Asia, Far Eastern Europe if you like, Central Asia, and infrastructure's never really been there for them to turn pro close to home and really make their name close to home. They've always had to travel and undergo this massive culture shock, and maybe that's not going to be the case as things move forward. And I find that really interesting. These two might have experienced a bit of a culture shock coming here this week, or maybe not. You know, it's a relaxed environment. Things tend to happen a little bit later. You've generally got the day pretty much to yourself. The facilities are really good. Just looking at it physically, they're very different, these two,
absolutely,
aren't they?
Yes.
Very, very different. So maybe we'll have a case here where Mukala's the guy who's going to get low, keep low, slip, move, get onto the inside to do his work, whereas Ndjolonimu will look to try and keep it long and use those longer levers. It doesn't always work out like that, but at first glance, that might be what you expect.
Indeed. Did some fancy footwork with his jump rope up on the canvas of the boxing ring here at the Rocky Road Boxing Gym. It's a working boxing gym. Plenty of good vantage points as well. So we've got assembled media from around the world and local spectators enjoying seeing the boxers go through their paces. And Mukala really enjoying life up there, looking incredibly relaxed, and the DJ doing an outstanding job. I'm not quite sure what this one is, my Shazam. My inner Shazam's not working, but the previous one, a remix of KRS-One, Sound of the Police, and Naughty by Nature Hip Hop Array. Kudos that man, working the decks magnificently.
I have to take your word for that. But no, it's filling up nicely. You see a few of the other fighters arriving. I see a Cuban tracksuit just circulating over on the far side. That lovely royal blue that you see around the world. Aran Lopez, of course, will be with us later on, and he was absolutely fantastic. I saw him in Havana at ringside. Won his fight by stoppage on what was a really enjoyable night, and you know, that's the kind of caliber of operator that we're looking forward to. Yoel Finol and Shakhobidin as well, and it's a great showcase and opportunity for the names outside of that big top four, if you like, to really make a mark and make an impression, and that's exactly how these two will be looking at it, because this is a bigger stage than stages they've been on previously. They've won titles, there'll be a big noise back home, but this is an opportunity to really show the world what they can do.
And indeed, remember, Mukala, even though he's from DR Congo, he resides in South Africa. IBA had the Nelson Mandela Cup down in South Africa. I think it was Durban, if memory serves. So IBA Champions Night Boxing making inroads into that continent. And as you say, with this stage here in Dubai, this will be being transmitted and televised down in Southern Africa, South Africa, where Mukala resides, and Namibia, where his opponent is from. And a real opportunity to claim bragging rights and that coveted continental crown for the entire mighty continent of Africa.
He's got nice quick hands, hasn't he? Watching him on the pad series, he's got decent looking feet, a nice quick hands. He throws that combination, turns around the front foot and slips off to the side, and I think that may well be a clue as to what we'll see on Friday, because that would make sense given the physicality of the two. He doesn't want to stand in front of somebody like Ndjolonimu too long, because he is a puncher, he's got that reputation. Get those punches off, turn around that front foot, slip off to the side, keep him turning, keep him moving. So you often don't really see all that much in workouts in terms of tactics and game plans, but I think this may well be what we see him do, is rapid combinations and then move.
So crisp pad work completed for Patrick Mukala. His first trainer, when he walked in the gym, was just filled with admiration as to how this guy drives himself in training, finds a reason, and he's one of those guys you have to hold back from doing too much rather than the other way around. You haven't got to go knocking on the door to get him out of bed to do his runs in the morning. He's already up and invariably leading the training group that he's a part of. And as we've said, boxing perhaps the most singular individual sport. Of course, it's a team that gets you ready to fight, but so much of it has to come from within the individual, especially that desire, when it's not about tactics and it's not about strategy, but the grunt work to provide the foundation to be able to carry out the strategy. That's got to come from within.
Yeah, it does, absolutely, and there's no hiding place. It's called the four corners of truth for a reason, because what you do in the gym, what you do in training, it will show on the night. If you cut some corners and you go deep in a fight and you're pushed hard by someone who has trained properly, then you'll be bang in trouble, and there's no escaping that. There's no getting away from it. So you do need to make sure you do everything you possibly can. And what a good camp does more than anything else for fighters, from what they tell me, is it keeps doubt under control. You don't question yourself. Well, you do in the dead of night at times. It's always going to happen, but you can then appease yourself and silence those doubts with the fact that you know you've done everything that you could have done. But sometimes you need to know when to take a rest. You know, the rest is absolutely key.
And that's where the external set of eyes can be really, really crucial. So Aki Karim up into the boxing ring to bring our next boxers into the roped arena.
Please welcome into the ring first with 15 wins against just one defeat. 5 of those wins coming by way of knockout. He comes to us from Bucharest, Albania. Ardit, flying Borrego.
Ardit Murja joining us from Bucharest, Albania. I've seen a few Albanian fighters recently, and actually he boxed, the last time he boxed was in July in Tirana on a big outdoor bill in Skanderberg Square, headlined by a fighter you know called Nelson Husa, who headlined at your call a couple of weeks ago, and I was there for that, commentating on that fight, and he sold a load of tickets, him and another fighter called Albi Muro. So Albanian fighters, they love an opportunity to ply their trade outside of their homeland. There's good support for boxing in Albania, but they generally travel well, don't they?
And not only do they travel well, their fan bases travel with them. So, as you said, the heavyweight you commentated on, veteran of IBA World Championships as recently as last year, if memory serves, over in Tashkent in Uzbekistan. The guy who led the charge from many respects from a London perspective, from a UK perspective, the Albanian Eagle, Kresnik Kato, his son doing good things in the amateur ranks now, still a trainer established and connected to the grassroots game, as his compatriot Murja doing some impressive stretching up in the boxing ring. My goodness, no problems with his mobility. But as you say, the Albanian fighters have such a fervent fan base, and they feed off that support and energy that they receive. Often placed last on the bill to keep the crowd in attendance. Not sure how many Albanians would have made the journey or who are living locally to support Murja, but if they are in town, invariably they'll be buying a ticket for the show on Friday night to cheer him on.
Oh, absolutely. I was in Tehran a couple of years ago for Florian Marcu's fight, his kind of homecoming fight outdoors at the football stadium, bang in the middle of town, and it was fantastic. 14,000, and just quite chaotic in a really good way, in that everybody wanted a piece of him all week, and they pretty much got it. I think he found the whole experience fairly exhausting, to be honest. But you look at Murja up there, he's in really good shape. This is at 60 kilos, the IBA lightweight limit, and he'll need to be in good shape because he's up against Jose Quiles Broton, who is a really, really experienced international amateur. Murja, as far as I can work out, did box internationally for Albania as an amateur, but it is a pro that he's really made his strides, just settling into the southpaw stance, then the orthodox stance, so capable of switching between the two. And I mean, this would be a huge win for him if he can take the scalp of Quiles Broton. That would really announce him. And again, it's about opportunities, isn't it?
And again, in IBA terms, as you say, Jose Quiles Broton is no stranger to success in the 3-round format of the sport. European silver to get himself to the Olympic Games in Paris earlier this summer, winning that European silver in Krakow last summer. Fought on IBA Champions Night Action in Madrid. We'll talk more about the crazy horse, Jose Quiles Broton, when he's up in the boxing ring. But what an opportunity, as you say, to face off against a man who's experienced in this format. But to your point about confidence and preparing and doing the work, he'll be telling himself that a ring is a ring is a ring. And so despite all of the decoration and the credentials that Quiles Broton brings, his belief in himself will be absolute. Of 16 fights, having made his debut in December 2018, he's only lost once. But again, not as expansively travelled as the elite IBA 3-round fighter Jose Quiles Broton, but an opportunity to make a name for himself at the expense of the experienced Spaniard.
And what's interesting about this as well is that it's scheduled for 8. Quiles Broton has done 6 rounds a couple of times in IBA pro bouts. And Murja, despite the fact that he's had 16 pro fights, hasn't been beyond 6 himself. So that round 7, round 8, to get that far could be new for the pair of them. And it might not sound like a lot, but if it's a tough fight and you get into those final 2, then they could find out quite a bit about themselves. The tape's in sight at that point, so you feel like fighters, they just kind of suck it up, summon it up and manage to go again. But yeah, that could be interesting, I think. The increased duration for the pair of them.
And again, coping with the occasion, because irrespective of all of the training and all of the preparation, so much nervous energy can be expended before the fighter arrives at the ring. So that's where the team is so crucial, just helping to keep things familiar, helping to keep the fighter in check, and that's the relationship between boxer and trainer. Even though at this level all the boxers know what they're doing, but that extra dimension to a relationship always springs to mind with me is Virgil Hunter and Andre Ward, when he had that really tough night against Kovalev, and Virgil Hunter was able to access something, having known him since he started boxing at 10, 11 years of age, just to bring it out, keep him in check emotionally, and bring out the extra that he needed to push those buttons and have the fighter push through. Of course, at that level, some guys take an opposite approach. And I'm not going to name them, but certain boxers say, well, I only need somebody to get me fit, right? And they rely on themselves. But there's so many intangibles, in addition to the physical qualities of preparation and being on weight and power to weight ratios. How is Murja going to adapt to performing on a stage such as this for the first time?
It's interesting watching him up there because he's got nice quick hands, he switches between stances. But when he's on the pads there, I don't know whether it was deliberate, but really he was just throwing kind of half punches. He threw that right hand in, and then he really turned the fist over as he landed it, and he kind of did the same thing with the left hand. So I'm curious to see how he goes about things on the night. I think he'll want to get close and then throw rapid combinations. Again, he's turning around that foot a lot. He looks like he's going to be a mobile kind of a fighter.
Ladies and gentlemen, a big thank you to Ardit Flying Murja.
Murja, no stranger to the fitness industry, so I don't think that conditioning is going to be a problem. We've just had a wink and a thumbs up from Jose Quiles Brotons as he prepares to make his way up into the boxing ring, following his opponent.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome his opponent as an amateur boxer. He was a European Games silver medalist. He is also 2020 Olympian. And as a professional, he is unbeaten with 1 win against no losses. Damas y caballeros de Elda, Comunidad Valencia, España, Jose Quiles.
So up into the boxing ring, Jose Quiles Broton, 27 years of age, from Elda in Spain, nicknamed the Crazy Horse, El Caballo Loco. Just going through his calisthenics, undefeated in the conventional professional ranks, having made his debut in December of 2022. Fought twice in IBA Champions Night boxing, most recently in Madrid, where he was in a terrific contest against the Cuban, now based in Bulgaria, Javier Ibanez, was ringside to commentate on that contest. And his first bout, his debut against in IBA Champions Night boxing, wasn't any easier, because it was against the 3-time reigning world champion, Sofian Umahar. Lost that contest on a unanimous decision over 6 against Javier Ibanez. He lost on a split decision over 8. But again, to be boxing against opponents of that caliber in his first 2 IBA Champions Night bouts shows you the level of competition that we get on IBA Champions Night affairs.
It really does, and as you say, he actually has done the 8, so he has done this distance. That was against Ibanez, and he won rounds in that fight. He won rounds against Umahar as well, so it's not like those were a couple of shutouts. They weren't. I think Umahar was 4-2 over the 6, Ibanez was 5-3, so...
Very close.
Yeah, I mean, he's got all the credentials you could want, really. He's been to 2 Olympic Games. He beat Mahmoud Samarkand in his first fight in Paris, and Samarkand, someone we both like. Fair to say that he wasn't really big enough for that weight, but he's still very, very quick, very, very skillful, and he handled him well in that fight, and then ran into Kolokov, who went on to win gold, didn't he, in his next fight. So, I mean, that's a tough draw. You get Kazakhstan and then Uzbekistan. That's not, you know, you're not getting the rub of the green there, but he's got the medals to prove his worth. He's been around a long time, very experienced.
And the manner in which he competed against Javier Ibanez in Madrid, my goodness, that was a terrific back and forth affair. Such different styles, but you could see the level of quality. And again, when you consider that was just his second IBA Champions Night contest, we know how the business of professional boxing works. If you're a superstar coming in from IBA boxing, the Olympic stage, you're going to be given showcase fights to ease you in to the professional ranks, help with that transition. There's really no such learning period here in IBA Champions Night boxing, because again, his debut was against Sofian Umahar, who he fought against Umahar at the World Championships last year at the quarterfinal stage in Tashkent, when Umahar went on to claim his 3rd world title. So really, it is best against the best from the upper echelons of international competition, of global competition, extended over a longer format. The best is removed. Head guards, of course, vanished at the 2013 World Championships after the 2012 Olympic Games in London. They didn't feature at the 2013 World Championships for men, so that not too big an adjustment, but the longer duration, and these guys are taking to it seamlessly and extending the quality, maybe at a slightly lower pace, but extending the quality that they showcase over 3 rounds over the 8 and 10 round format of IBA Champions Night affairs.
As you say, the matching is tough. You get matched hard. They want 50-50 fights. The O is not really prized, and that's a great thing. We both thoroughly enjoyed covering WSB a few years ago, and in WSB a 50-50 record was a good record. Even, you know, a worse record than that. If you were, I remember Peter McGrail boxing in WSB. I think he was 1-3. But you looked at the people he boxed, and you thought, actually, that's quite a good record.
Yes, indeed.
given the performances he put up, and they've carried that kind of ethos on, and it's good to see.
And a similar fate befell Sam Maxwell. Remember, he was boxing for the British Lionhearts. Who did he run into on 2 occasions from the Ukraine Ottomans? A certain Vasyl Lomachenko. Over 5 rounds. Yeah, again, a losing ledger, not
And
necessarily
now,
an
ladies
indication
and
of one's
gentlemen, let's
ability
welcome
in
into the ring
IBA
now our
Champions
next
Night and World
contest,
Series
which will be
boxing
an
affairs.
8th rounder for the IBA Professional Asian Championship title belt. Please welcome to the ring first, coming with an unbeaten record and a 100% knockout ratio. 13 wins and all 13 by way of knockout. Presenting WBO Asia Pacific title challenger from Bacoor, Cavite, Philippines, the Trigger Man, Weljon Mindoro.
What a prospect we have in our midst here, vaulting over the ropes, a la Chris Eubank Jr. and Senior and Prince Naseem Hamed. 75 kilograms, Weljon Mindoro, 13 wins out of 14 fights, undefeated, just one draw, but of his 13 wins, all of them inside the distance. His nickname is the Trigger Man, and this is one heavy-handed individual. WBO Asia Pacific title is a bauble that he has boxed for, but my goodness, he can really crack. Heavy-handed puncher, 100% knockout ratio in terms of his wins, and a knockout of the year contender on his highlight reel affairs as well.
I can't wait to see this guy. You look at the record, and I've been looking him up online and watching a few clips, but that draw, yeah, the 12 rounds against Takeshi Inoue, who has been in some really good company, Tim Tszyu, Jaime Munguia, so that's a proper result. That is a proper result, and everybody else has got cleaned out by the Trigger Man. And Tyler Goodjohn was one of them. That's I mean, boxing's crazy, isn't it? You look at the record, and I saw Tyler Goodjohn's name, and I thought, is that the same one I covered about 10 years ago?
Indeed.
A super lightweight in the UK, good fighter, tough fighter, and it was, former English champion. He's, again, it's someone who's come here, who's undefeated, who is used to knocking people out. He will be bursting full of confidence. Bursting full of confidence.
All but two of his contests have been in his native Philippines. Spent time training in gyms in the United States of America, sparring with accomplished operators in the gyms over in the States as well. Improving his ring craft, improving his confidence, but he's got that thing that can't be taught. And we talked about the different types of power and how we see elastic punches, muscular punches. This guy appears to be heavy-handed, meaning that when he hits you in the final round, like dropping a shot put, it's the same thing over and over again. It's not like a baseball bat or a golf club where you've got to generate that leverage. He seems to be the type of puncher that when he touches you, it's going to hurt something, break something, or put your lights out. Because there's no loading up. There's no discernible difference in how he throws a shot. But everything seems to be hurtful and heavy.
And that's bad news for the opponent often, because those naturally heavy hands, as you say, it's a phrase we hear, and it's one that strikes fear into the heart of people a lot of the time, because what you can see sometimes in fights is the fighter with the heavy hands, as you say, just touches his opponent, or seemingly just touches his opponent, and they feel the power, and you see a bit of panic, because they just think, oh no, this is, I'm either going to have to get used to this, find a way of getting used to this, or I'm in trouble. And it's a hell of a weapon to have, it really is. It's kind of priceless, but at the same time, and you mentioned this earlier on, you can't get too carried away with it, because there will come a day, although he's had it with the split draw against a tough guy, he's had it, a day where you punch someone and they're not cooperating in the way that people generally have. So I think that's a really valuable experience for him, actually. And that's a 12-rounder too, so you've gone down the stretch, and because he's got that on his CV, that I think is what makes me most interested in him. He's had that kind of lesson, but the rest of the time, we know what's happened.
And again, just talking about different types of punches and how guys generate their power. We're in a really cacophonous atmosphere here. The DJ's working overtime on the decks. We've got a healthy crowd in attendance, but you can hear on the pads a different sound from we've heard all afternoon. And it's the resounding thud. It's very sharp. It's almost like it's a combination of a gunshot and a cannonball. And I'm not exaggerating this, but it does sound different to the punches. And of course, he's heavier. not than the 80 kilo boys from Southern Africa who started off our show, but it sounds different from what we've heard so far.
Yeah, it does, and it's always a bit of a giveaway. It's just that sharper explosion of air, isn't it, basically, when he hits the pads. That right on cue there. That sounds like a gunshot.
Yes.
That sounds like a gunshot. And I experienced this when I was covering football years and years ago. You go to a training ground, and some footballers just strike the ball cleaner than others, and it makes a different noise. And in football, they call it pinging it.
Right,
because it makes
right.
a pinging sound.
Yes.
And with this, it makes that crack gunshot noise. With other fighters, it is more of a dull thud. With someone like him, it's that sharper explosion of air. And it's the kind of noise where if you're in the gym and there's a few people working out and you hear that, your head's on a swivel, isn't it? You turn around and say, who's that? Who's that? You want to know who it is straight away.
Our good friend and colleague, Barry Jones, former WBO world champion, tells a brilliant story that when he was getting ready to fight off against Astelino Popo Freitas, he was in the gym, in the caverns of the arena, the bowels of the arena, getting ready, and he said he heard this sound next door, and he thought, what on earth is that? And it was the man he was about to face, Astelino Popo Freitas from Brazil. Now, Barry actually knocked him down in that contest, put him on the floor, but then Popo Freitas does what Popo Freitas does and got the W, but again, he was one of those otherworldly, ethereal punches where he touches guys and it's as though they're injected and something strange happens.
I always find that's an interesting move when you put fighters who are fighting each other next door to each other. I mean, you don't really need that necessarily, although I remember out in Saudi, Fabio Wardy and Fraser Clark, they had their dressing rooms right next to each other, and I noticed that as I was walking through the bowels of the arena earlier in the night, and just thought, wow, that's kind of interesting. Two big heavyweights next door to each other, because you get those kinds of stories. I think, was it Tyson Spinks, where they just heard the thud of Tyson just like punching the wall next door, and mentally, psychologically, that's not what you need, is it, when you're heading into a mission like that? But generally now they will keep them apart. One will be one end of the corridor, one will be the other end of the corridor. But there's a few fighters on this card, and the main eventers will generally get kept apart. These two, him and Camilleri, they might be next door. And if you can make that kind of noise on the pads, and you know your guy can hear it, then you're going to do it, aren't you?
It does do something. And picking up on the Michael Spinks, Mike Tyson story that you told, it was the late Butch Lewis. Promoter used to wear a tuxedo, no shirt and a bow tie. When he went in to watch the hands getting wrapped, that's what he came out saying. He's going to do that to my guy.
Weljon Mindoro. Tomorrow evening, 8 rounds for the IBA Professional Asian Championship title. And let's now welcome his opponent into the ring. He comes to the ring a seasoned campaigner with 38 amateur contests, including 29 big wins. He is a full IBF Australasian, WBC Asian, IBF Pan Pacific and Australian champion from Melbourne, Victoria, Australia, Yoel Camilleri.
So into the boxing ring, the shaven-headed figure, Joel Camilleri. Got his first fight outside of Australia, fought a couple of times in Thailand, but the majority of his 38 contests, all but 2, have been at home. Experienced operator now, the 34-year-old who resides in Melbourne, in Victoria. Of his 38 contests, 29 wins, 14 of them inside the distance. And he's mixed in some good company, particularly down in Australia. Faced off against an undefeated Tim Tszyu for the Australian super welterweight title, looking to defend that, but lost on points over 10 rounds. Also been in a ring against Sam Solomon down under. So well-traveled, experienced. Used to be a supply teacher by day, worked in the education field. And again, consummate professional who will face off against any challenge presented to him at and around his weight class.
He left that teaching job to take a job at the Zoo Boxing Academy, actually, from what I'm told. So those two know each other. I don't know whether Tim's planning to come to the fight on Friday night, but they're close. They're close. And that often happens as well against a former opponent. As you said, they shared the ring. He's got that win against Sam Solomon, the former world champion. A faded Sam Solomon at that point, let's be realistic about that. But he's got a real record. He's been happy to take the challenges, to take the fights, and that's always a good thing to see. Another guy he's been in with, Anthony Buttigieg, who was 6-0 at the time. He went on to become a Commonwealth champion, good fighter. So, you know, he's done a bit in the ring, Camilleri, definitely. And as we've been saying all the way through, it's an opportunity. He's not going to be fazed by the record and the reputation or the noise that Mindoro makes on the pads. You know, this is the kind of guy that you need for someone like him, because that's not going to put the wind up him in the way that it would, again, for somebody less experienced.
Absolutely, and he's also made a point that in his career, both amateur and professional, he has never touched the canvas. And that can be so. We've got an immovable object in the form of Camilleri and his toughness and his chin and his punch resistance, but he's going in against a preternatural puncher who has won all 13 of his fights inside the distance. But of course, the best chins in boxing are the ones that don't get hit, so you don't want to be tasting that power too often. And he's got a nose that is being adjusted, but ironically, that's not from boxing. In Aussie ruled football when he was a kid, because Tim Tszyu, before they fought, there was a lot of back and forth, and he said, yeah, he talks a lot. He said, and I'm going to move his nose back to where it should have been. But the injury didn't come from boxing. It came from Aussie rules football as a kid. And much like Bernard Hopkins used to say, he's not going to bother getting it straightened out until he's finished in the fight.
Australian rules football, I tell you, it's some of the most savage spectacles I've seen have been when they do the kind of combined rules, where Australian rules football team will play a Gaelic football team, and they come up with this set of, I can't remember what they call it now, it is combined rules, something like that, and it is a very, very physical sport that is played without any kind of padding or anything like that. It's tremendous to watch. So that is a good schooling for toughness if you're then going to take to the boxing ring, because as we know, skill and technique and all of those things play a massive part, and you need a level of that to get to a certain level. But then once you're there, a lot of the time, whether you're going to win or lose or not, will depend quite simply on how hard you are, how robust you are, how tough you are, how much you can take and keep coming back for more. And it will never change that. In some other sports, contact sports, none of them are quite like boxing anyway, but rule changes down the years have taken a physical aspect out of it, and just quite how much you want it, that base desire of how much you want it, isn't maybe as important now as it used to be, but it is in boxing, and it always will be.
Yeah. And he possesses those qualities in abundance, in addition to his skill and his ring craft. After the loss to Tim Tszyu, spent time working with Jeff Horn, who again made a real name for himself coming out of the education business, going in against Pacquiao, and my goodness, what a turn up for the books that was.
That was really the start, wasn't it, of the last few years of Australian boxing, where they've really made an impression and made a mark. But that was a massive, massive win for Horn. At the minute, you know, you've got the Maloney brothers. Sky Nicholson won a world title the other day. Tim Tszyu was going well until recently, yeah. But you know, he'll be back. Justice Hooney at heavyweight. There's other fighters as well. I saw
Jai Otapaya's based
Jai,
himself,
of course, Jai Opataya.
Yep.
Jai Opataya's pulling up trees at the minute.
And Terry Moana has just
signed
professional. I mean, he had professional bouts going into the Olympic Games. I think his record was 3 or 4-0. The big man with the Cook Islands heritage. But now he's signed a promotional deal with Matchroom in the UK. And the way that guy can crack and his dimensions, he's likely to continue the undefeated start that he's made to his professional career. Remember, we saw him at the World Championships last year where he came up short against Bakadir Jalolov. But after that, en route to the Olympics, it was ridiculous. Nobody heard the final bell, and there were lots of WOs on his record because he was just generating that momentum of icing everybody who was in the ring with. But again, to your point, that is a level of the caliber of talent that is emerging from Australia.
It is, and he's a super exciting fighter. That fight in the Olympics between him and Jalolov, that was, you could see the respect that Jalolov had for his power, and he went about that fight with a little bit more caution than normal.
So preparing to make her way into the boxing ring is Puneh Akhundtabarmazandarani. Likes to be known as Tina, 37 years of age from Tehran. Brings to the ring an 11-fight record, 7 wins, 4 of them inside the distance, 3 defeats and a draw. Very experienced operator, has fought all over the world, including Ukraine, Bangladesh, Thailand, and here preparing to box in Dubai in a contest in the 57 kilogram weight class over 6'3". And again, IBA Champions Night Boxing staging some terrific female action. I was down in Ethiopia when Patricia from the Finchley Boxing Club won an African title. So no stranger to, again, just catching the wave that is female boxing and the stride that it's making at the moment. And IBA boxing has been instrumental in that, because way before it was an Olympic sport, way back to Scranton, Pennsylvania in the 90s, that's how Mary Khan was able to rack up the multitude of world titles that she possesses. It has been a feature of the IBA program.
It has, and that's always been, you know, an absolute joy of covering IBA boxing, because it just meant that when it came into the mainstream in professional boxing, for kind of the second time post London 2012, obviously the 90s there was a big scene, but then it went a little bit dormant, and then there was this new movement really after London 2012. We were used to it. It's nothing new for us. You know, you've been seeing these people fighting for years and years and years, and it's just growing all the time, isn't it? The depth is increasing all of the time, and we saw that fight between Amanda Serrano, who didn't go down the Olympic route, and Katie Taylor, who did, a few weeks ago, the rematch on Netflix, 50, 60 million people tuning into that one, which was absolutely fantastic coverage for the sport, because I don't want to diss the top of the bill too much, but that was a real fight. That was the real fight on the card, and everybody got to see exactly what they could do, which was absolutely tremendous. And she's been in some good company as well, she really has, because the name that kind of jumps out at you is Sofia Ochigava. When I looked at her record and I thought, it did come back to me immediately, and then I thought, no, that was her, wasn't it? Who lost to Taylor?
That's right.
Who lost to Taylor?
60 kilograms in London, that's right. Incredibly experienced and talented operator from Russia. Multiple world champions under his belt. Now I can see over the far side of the gym, the surgeon has just stepped in. Ben Whittaker, undefeated prospect, Olympic silver medalist, world championship medalist as well. Out of the West Midlands, said he wants to be mayor of Wolverhampton. He's just stepped into the ring. No doubt he's going to join us here on the day in a few moments' time. But as you can imagine,
maybe he's going to throw down the gauntlet to Aran Lopez.
A rematch.
Yeah,
that would be interesting after they met in the COVID-affected Olympic Games in Tokyo 3 years ago. Ben Whittaker coming away with silver, Aran Lopez coming away with his second gold. He's in the house right now, but up in the boxing ring, Puneh Akhundtabarmazandarani just going through her paces. Paddles are being held up by her trainer, and the bag mitts have been adopted, demonstrating good head movement as she dips beneath. The paddles being utilized by the trainer.
Good shape to her, quite a wide stance. Interesting that she's kind of togged up, isn't she? She's got the tracksuit on. It's maybe just going to use this to shift a little bit of weight before the weigh-in. 57 kilos this is set at. Featherweight, and there's nothing unusual about this. There's nothing alarming about this. Sometimes in fight weeks, people look at fighters who are looking to get that sweat on and feel that it's an indication, they're tight at the weight. There's a problem with the weight. At the lower weights, everyone's tight at the weight. You have to work hard to make the weight. If you don't have to work hard to make the weight, then you're in the wrong weight division.
Exactly. And again, as Andy was pointing out, ruminating on just a few moments ago, the women's side of the business has made such strides in recent times. Our trailblazers like Jane Couch, of course, the Fleetwood assassin out of the UK. Many times she couldn't get a license to box in the United Kingdom. We've all heard stories about how Caroline Dubois and Katie Taylor herself had to adopt aliases, go in the ring as boys in order to be able to train. Thankfully, we're past those times now, and women's boxing on the professional side of the business, perhaps because the pyramid of the base of the pyramid is continuing to grow, but the willingness of the boxers to face off against best versus best, irrespective of the outcome, is something that this generation of men are seemingly taking note of, and we're getting far more battles for undisputed at the top end of the men's sport as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We saw one in Saudi recently, Sky Nicholson against Raven Chapman, two fighters still pretty early in their career, and they were both happy to take it because that attachment to the zero, to the undefeated record, just isn't really there. They're happy to traverse the weights as well. Physiologically, from what I'm told, it is easier for women to do that, to switch weights and move around the weights, easier than it is for men, but they are setting a really, really good example in that regard, and you don't really see that changing, to be honest with you. That ethos has kind of been instilled now, and you just want it to stay and grow into other areas, because we understand why the undefeated record, since television was invented, basically became this massive thing, because you can hype up an undefeated record without any kind of hesitation. You can say whatever you want, can't you? And particularly if you've got a fight between two undefeated fighters, you could go to town on it in a way that you can't if they've maybe got a defeat. But ultimately, it doesn't really mean that much. You need to look at the record and who have they boxed, basically.
And the manner in which those defeats come about.
Exactly.
Because if they lose in a thriller, if they lose in a really close, contentious contest, it doesn't necessarily hurt their stock. But it's for us as people on this side of the business to get that narrative out there that the O isn't the be-all and end-all. So Puneh Akhundtabarmazandarani leaving the boxing ring, up the 3 steps, and between the ropes is her opponent tomorrow night, Xenia Jorneac from Puneh, Romania. Experienced professional with 18 bouts, having made her debut in 2014. 11 wins, 3 of them inside the distance, 7 defeats. It's her IBA Champions Night debut tomorrow night. Remember, it's 6 3-minute rounds in the 57 kilogram division. But this, a very experienced and well-traveled operator. She's been all over the world, Andy, including Denmark, Germany, her home country of Romania, and her most recent outing was in September last year in my neck of the woods at Wembley Arena.
Absolutely, and you look at the defeats, they've come on the road, basically, and there are no stoppages in those 7 defeats. She's come to win, let's make that clear. No mistake there, she has come to win this fight. But in the defeats, basically, nobody has been able to stop her. Dina Thorsland couldn't do it. She's a terrific fighter. Ashley Brace, Kim Clavel, Shannon Ryan. And that was the fight you mentioned there at Wembley Arena about a year or so ago. So she is experienced. She absolutely knows her way around that ring. And it's kind of a difficult one to call this, actually, I think, when you look at the two of them. Should be a good fight.
Absolutely. Shows the tendency to switch hit, currently operating as a southpaw is Jorneac. But again, for her, being in another country, nothing new at all. Just keep the preparation, keep the routine, get on the right time zone, and then it's showtime, preparing to do what she does best. Now and again, away from IBA boxing, women's boxing contested over 2-minute rounds. In IBA 3-round format, it's 3-minute rounds, and a lot of women are lobbying for it to be 3-3s in the professional ranks as well. But one suspects that's probably a money thing more than anything else as to why it's not happening.
Yeah, exactly. It is quite an unusual situation where you've got the boxing 3-minute rounds in the amateurs in IBA boxing, and then 2-minute rounds in the pros. Basically, there's nothing stopping them boxing 3-minute rounds in the pros. You apply to the commission, whoever's jurisdiction it is, the promoter applies, and they can grant it or they can not grant it. It has happened. Marlon Esparza recently has done it. Nicola Adams has done it. Serrano did it, but she had to drop her WBC belt to do it because they won't sanction it. The World Boxing Council, they don't want 3-minute rounds. I'm not quite sure why that is. And the arguments for and against it are both quite compelling. We've got this quite unique spectacle over the 2-minute rounds where it's incredible action, absolutely extraordinary action, and it has produced some sensational fights But there are some fighters who feel that extra minute per round would suit them better. But it's hard to know, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Because if you've got the stamina to go like a lunatic for 2 minutes, people think, well, an extra minute would really suit you. But maybe you couldn't do it for 3. It's the fighters with better technique, I think, who are suited more to the longer duration, because they can hold that technique better later in the fight because they don't waste any energy, and that's when you can really bring it to bear.
Absolutely. And then what would it do to the intensity that we've come to associate with women's contests, as epitomized in the rematch between Taylor and Serrano, as it was in their first one at Madison Square Garden in the spring of the previous year. I was ringside to commentate on that contest, and it was just pulsating action of the highest quality from opening bell to last, because as you say, 2 minutes probably isn't enough to get your opponent out of there and in such great condition that they come out as fresh as proverbial daisies for the next round. And so everything seems to be being fought at an optimal level of conditioning because of that shorter duration when compared to IBA boxing. But will it go the way of IBA champions or tournament boxing and go to 3 minutes? That remains to be seen. This one is over 3 minute rounds, and that's what happens on the IBA Champions Night stage.
So she's just having a little shake out here. They've got the gloves on, got the pads out, but not going to do too much. As I said earlier, may have trained already today, maybe saving that for later on. But experienced fighters know what they need to do during fight week. They know day by day where they'll be at with their weight. They know what they need to do to get themselves mentally focused. And for some of them, honestly, these open workouts are something that they can do without. Some fighters find them a little bit of an imposition. Others actually quite enjoy them because it's a break from the monotony of the gym. And you've got a few cameras, you've got a few people around, you can have a little bit of fun and mentally just let yourself loosen slightly, because all the while, day by day, minute by minute almost, they're building to that point where they really flick the switch and go into fight mode, and you don't want to do it before you have to, and you don't want to waste any emotional energy during the week either.
Just watching Jorneac, and she is almost incessantly on the front foot. There have been a couple of pivots to avoid incoming fire from the pads of her coach, but invariably she's walking her coach down and cutting off the ring. Constant pursuit. Will she apply those tactics tomorrow, or on Friday rather, against Akhundtabarmazandarani, aka Tina, from the Islamic Republic of Iran? And that's why we love these pre-fight workouts, the chance to ruminate on the possibilities and permutations, because both of them are going to go in with confidence sky high. And even though we've said that in Champions Night format boxing, a loss isn't as terminal or as damaging as it was in the professional code a few years ago, make no mistake, winning's a habit that everybody likes to get into, and they'll be seeking that W filled with fervor and ultimate confidence after the preparation that they've had to get ready for this one, because it will lead to bigger and better opportunities.
Absolutely. It's not when a defeat isn't, when it doesn't scare a fighter as much as it does in years gone by in pro boxing. What it means is that it's not quite the brutal game of snakes and ladders that we've seen before, where a defeat could see you just slip down into the basement, they lock the door, throw away the key, and you're done, because no one really wants to fight you, particularly if you're good. But you still stay where you are, or maybe move down a little bit at the very, or sideways. Like you say, we don't want to get this twisted. Everybody is coming here to win. It's not just a case of, well, let's just both do our best and whoever wins, 3 cheers. This is a ruthless business. Everybody is coming here to win.
Well, if you're a fan of IBA Champions Night boxing, this man needs no introduction. Jose Miguel Borrego from Aguascalientes in Mexico. And this man is a formidable operator. In the professional code of boxing, it's a 25 fight record, 21 wins, 17 of them early, 4 defeats, on an IBA Champions Night boxing. Just as we've been talking about, he's got 3 fights under his belt, a loss in his second fight in Sochi against Hariton Argaba. I was ringside to commentate on that, and my goodness, he pushed the talented, undefeated Russian boxer all the way at the Boxing Academy in Sochi. And then in his home city, in his hometown, I was ringside at Aguascalientes to commentate on that, when he walked down and stopped. The guy was undersized, really, but Dante Attore, who's from Ohio but fights out of Las Vegas, was put on the end of this man's unrelenting attack. And in his debut at this level, he went to Kazakhstan, Andy, his opponent's hometown, and took out the reigning world champion, Aslanbek Shimbergenov, with a devastating combination in the 4th round of a contest scheduled for 5. And if you're not prepared, mentally, physically, this man will find you out. A terrific boxer who brings unstinting, educated pressure to every contest that he features in. And you better be prepared to go the distance and have the resolve and minerals to withstand the heavy-handed assaults that this man launches.
Absolutely, I like him. He's always good to watch, and he always brings it, as you say, and he has no apprehension about any opponent that you could put him in with, and his record shows you that, really. So he would have taken this opportunity in a split second. He would have absolutely snapped the matchmaker's hand off. Aguascalientes was where the Mexico Guerreros used to box, wasn't it? Out of that little bull ring in World Series boxing.
Yes.
Somewhere I've always really wanted to go, actually, to
beautiful
cover
city,
a fight.
beautiful town. It's the geographical center of Mexico. So where IBA champ held the pre-fight, the pre-event workouts and weigh-ins and things of that nature, we were directly beneath the column, towering column that went up for stories and stories, and that is the geographical center point of the largest Spanish-speaking nation in the world, that is Mexico. Beautiful city, and it's Jerry who puts on a lot of promotions down there. That's where the Cubans turn professional, when they go down in a boxing team shorts, but they have the blessing of the Cuban regime, and they rack up professional bouts as Julio Cesar La Cruz, Lorenzo Lazaro Alvarez, Aran Lopez, we'll see later. They've all boxed on Jerry's promotions, Golden Star Promotions, down in Aguascalientes. So a place that is rich in boxing tradition. And as you say, that bullfighting plaza is an epic structure to behold.
Oh, it really is. It looks absolutely terrific. And choosing to do some work on the pads here, Borrego. Didn't mess around, just had a little wander around the ring, a bit of a shadow box, and then just got the gloves on nice and quick. This is 67 kilos.
And again, he fights with real purpose. There's really not much feeling out, and it's not reckless. It's not blind aggression, it's educated pressure. Terrific movement in the pocket, and even if he's not letting his hands go, which isn't very often, by the way, but when he's getting himself into position, the other opponent is having to think. And again, that bout in Sochi against Hariton Agraba, my goodness, that was hard fought and intense. And against Dante Attore, Attore demonstrated terrific toughness that night, but he suffered nose damage. He was in against a man. It epitomized the boxing truism as to why there are weight divisions, because he had all the skill, he had all the resolve and intangibles to compete with him, but physically could not keep the man off, and he was retired in the 4th round of a contest scheduled for 5. But that is the type of unremitting pressure that Borrego brings to his craft of boxing.
It's one of those fights, I think, against Agraba where he didn't get any love on the cards, but he was competitive all the way through, and it was just an example of the harsh nature of the way boxing scored. You can win a minute of every round and you've won a third of the fight, but on the cards you win nothing. And Agrab was a good fighter. I've seen him recently too. Very well organised, very compact, doesn't give anything away, and you can tell against Borrego that he wasn't going to take any liberties with him. He was happy to go down the stretch and win on points and not get greedy at any point, because that's what he wants, Borrego. He wants you to stand in front of him and have it with him. And particularly if you're a mover, you can spend 5 or 6 rounds and maybe you're ahead, and what he wants is he'll just keep going, hoping he'll get to you and slow you down that way. Or maybe you'll start to think to yourself, you know what, I fancy finishing this with a bit of a flourish.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome his opponent into the ring, also with the next
So up the steps and into the ring beneath his baseball cap is Ryan Blue Martin, 31 years of age now. He's a man who resides in LA, born in Tennessee. And what a prospect this man was. Took a perfect record into the ring to face off against the Tartan Tornado Josh Taylor at the Hydro in Glasgow back in November of 2018. That was in the World Boxing Super Series. I was ringside to commentate on that particular contest. It was Abel Sanchez in his corner that night, and Abel Sanchez had to spend a lot of time, Andy, trying to rouse his man because it was a strangely reluctant display. And I know Josh Taylor was who he was, en route to becoming the undisputed light welterweight champion of the world. But fighting on the road outside of the United States for just the second time in his career that night, and he seemed a little bit reticent. Maybe the occasion got to him, but that shouldn't detract from the skill set that Ryan Blue Martin possesses. Had to spend some time away from the sport because there was an adverse finding on his post-fight dope test prescribed by UCAD after the fight against Taylor in the UK. So spent some time away, now back in the ring and looking to maintain the momentum that he has built up since returning after that enforced layoff.
It was one of those nights against Taylor, wasn't it, where I think he probably did just freeze a little bit. He's travelling away from home, he's going to Taylor's backyard. Taylor, big reputation, and he was entering his prime at that point as well, Josh Taylor, because that was the quarterfinals, wasn't it? He then beat Baranchik to become a world champion, then beat Regis Prograis, an incredible fight. We were both there for that, to become a unified champion, and then took down Jose Ramirez to become undisputed. And that march began, in a way, with this fight, but I was there for his one before he met Martin against Victor Postol, and that was a great win for Taylor. So what I'm saying is that was a hell of a time to run into Josh Taylor, particularly when you've got to travel away to Scotland. So I can understand how what happened there ended up happening, and there was no shame in it because you're in with somebody absolutely elite. But as you say, he had some time out after that, some enforced time out after that, and it'll be interesting to see where his level of ambition is at with his career now, given that he's into his 30s. Does he feel he can get back to the top? He's in tremendous shape.
Yes, absolutely. And his skill set is second to none. The variety that he possesses, the repertoire, you can see he's a broad-shouldered, long-limbed boxer, but at the same time, very compact, wonderful movements in the pocket. And he against Borrego, the style should gel beautifully because it is a proverbial boxer in Ryan Martin against a front foot aggressor. Not a mindless slugger, but somebody who brings pressure to his boxing against a man who can stick and move and pop with the best of them.
And his only other defeat was against a good fighter as well, in Robert Easter Jr., who at that stage, he'd won a title at lightweight, a world title at lightweight. His only defeat was against Mikey Garcia in the unification. So those are the only two blots on the copybook. But you're right, stylistically, we feel like we know what we will get here. And what's interesting about these kinds of matchups is, has he got it in the tank and the concentration and the technique to do his thing for all 8 rounds, Martin? Or will Borrego get to him? Borrego would probably prefer this to be a longer duration, to be honest with you, wouldn't he?
Grind it out, work the man down. You can walk the man down. You can see he's got a long, lean torso. He's in terrific condition, but one suspects that Borrego will be licking his chops at the prospect of being able to target that, but he's going to have to get inside the estimable reach and sharp shooting skills that Ryan Martin possesses. And again, this promises to be a cracking contest as Ryan Martin continues his return to the boxing ring.
Absolutely, and then somebody who I think is going to just stroll up and join us now is our good pal Radio Raheem, who knows Ryan Martin, a fighter from stateside.
Radio
somebody
Raheem.
who we
I
see
know it's
around
a professional
all over
outfit when I see you two at the dais. Well done.
Very kind, very kind. We see you everywhere. We see you everywhere. There's nowhere you don't get to in this sport of boxing. And we were just chatting before the workout started about how boxing has always been a global sport, but particularly these last 2 or 3 years, you've been venturing to parts of the world that you maybe not even been to before with Saudi and these other ventures. And with what the IBA are now starting, this fight is in Dubai, but a lot of their fights have been in Russia and Central Asia. I think you might be clocking up a few more air miles.
I mean, to your point, have boxing will travel. And I've traveled the world for boxing, but only in the past 5 years has it been so much in the Middle East. And I do believe that the culture here is a new fan base for the sport. I remember when we came over for Joshua Ruiz too, and the fans really didn't know what to do with night. And the fans in the UK, of course, were all about it, and America was looking to see if Ruiz was going to be able to do it again. And the fans here were just getting educated about what boxing brings to their arena and to their culture. And from that point to now, we're seeing arenas being filled. We're seeing now the IBA bringing this into Dubai, and a filled boxing gym. I'm hearing people talk about it in the hotels and on the street. They're looking forward to seeing boxing. I think it is a testament to just how global a language boxing is, and how no matter where it is, people appreciate it.
As you know, on Friday evening will be a star-studded affair, and we have a rising star from the United Kingdom, from the Midlands in the United Kingdom. He is an Olympic silver medalist. He is an unbeaten professional. Please make some noise for Ben Whittaker.
So, up into the ring steps Ben Whittaker, the Olympic silver medalist, the undefeated professional, nicknamed the Surgeon. Trains with his godfather, Joby Clayton, and Sugar Hill in his corner as well. Let's listen in to Aki Karim. So skipping up into the boxing ring in pretty sprightly fashion is Nikita Zon, undefeated professional, 9 fights, 8 wins, 6 of them coming early, 1 draw after making his professional debut in September of 2021, and he, Andy, getting a late shout to replace the world champion at cruiserweight in IBA boxing, Atayev Sharabuddin, who had to pull out just a few days ago with illness. In the other corner will be Aran Lopez, the 2-time Olympic champion. But again, what an opportunity here on the Champions Night stage for Nikita Zon. Before we get your ruminations on that, let's just introduce the man who's become our third wheel here on our day at the Rocky Road Gym in Dubai, and that is the Olympic silver medalist, the man who took IBA World Championship bronze in Yekaterinburg in 2019, currently an undefeated professional, and that is the Surgeon Ben Whittaker. So Ben, things going, before we talk about your professional career and your last outing, just explain and elaborate for us as to how important IBA boxing, Olympic boxing was in your development, and that has allowed you to take this fast track as a pro by boxing all over the world, seeing every type of style that there is, facing guys who have different boxing cultures, from Uzbekistan, from Russia, from Kazakhstan, from the States, from Cuba. How important was that 3-round IBA championship pedigree in the fast track you've made to your pro career?
I think you sold it better than me. But I think perfect example is Galal. You saw Galal the other day. I think he's under 10 fights and he's interim world champion. And that just shows the level of amateur boxing at the highest level. You fly around the world, you go into different cultures, different backgrounds, you see different styles, different coaching styles. And I think for boxers from the UK, we're kind of used to just one style. So when you see this, you fight different styles, and over a week you're fighting 5 guys, you pick up great knowledge and you pick it up quick as well.
And it's really, really tough too. I think that's something that people underestimate. There's when somebody turns pro with an Olympic medal, people look at them a lot of the time, in Great Britain anyway, and think, well, you had it all your own way, you had the best of this and the best of that, and with you and others, they'll always question, you know, your minerals, basically. And it's always made me laugh, because when you were 19, you ran into Alexander Kushitashvili twice in a few months, and that's not for the faint-hearted.
Yeah, it wasn't the best 2 months, I'll tell you now, but things like that, they hold you in great stead. Like you say, England have it their own way. When you go out to places like this, England's just a small little place on the map. And like I said, you come up against Cuba, who's had about 300 fights, 400 fights, you name it. At the time, I only had 40 fights. So I think for any level, at that top level, it's a place to you learn really quick.
We'll get back to more of what you have done and what you're up to at the moment. But for Nikita Zon, he only got this fight at a few days' notice because your familiar opponent, Shakhobidin was supposed to be in the other corner. He's the world champion, 86 kilograms. What type of mindset, undefeated as a pro, Zon, remember, what type of mindset will he be bringing in when he's got such an iconic figure from IBA and Olympic boxing in the other corner? How will he be approaching it, having been given this late shout?
I'm sure he's been training. I'm sure he's in shape, and he knows what the task ahead. He's from Russia, so I'm sure he's not that scared. But he looks good. Southpaw brings something different. But for me, it's hard to top Aran Lopez. You know, he's 2-time Olympic gold medalist, just won another medal in Paris. And you just look at him standing there, man. He's cool, calm, collected. Looks like he wants to go home. He looks nice and calm. And I think when you're at that level, you're nice and calm. There's no extended energy burn. He just wants to get in there and get it done.
And to your point, as you say, he's looking as though he's just preparing for a Sunday stroll, watching on against Nikita Zon. But when you had that, you went through a brilliant Olympic Games behind closed doors in Tokyo, had the privilege of commentating on it. When you got to the gold medal bout, having had that terrific run, to the broad-back Russian you fought, Imam Katayev, taking him out, your confidence must have been sky high. But what was it like to get in a ring with a man who was looking for his second consecutive Olympic crown? Give us a sense as to the ring craft he brings, the calmness he brings, and the precision he brings to his craft.
Again, you sold it all again. That's I think his best thing is his calmness. People get up for the fight differently, and for me, I wanted to hit the wall. I wanted that excitement, and I looked to the right of me, and he was just there, just kicking the floor. And I was like, this is weird, man. And I did the ring walk. I did my little dancing to try and get into my ego, and he just walked to the ring normal, touched my gloves, smiled and nodded. I went, yeah, he's been here before. And when you can't break someone like that, it's hard. And that's what I like about him. He's calm. He's seen it all. If he gets hit, gets hurt, he laughs it off. If he hurts them, he laughs it off. And I think that's his superpower, it's that calmness.
Yeah, he's always been like that, hasn't he? I've always been a big fan. I never quite understood how he managed to make 75 kilos. I remember seeing him training with La Cruz once back in 2015. And when you looked at them physically, you would have sworn it was the other way around.
Yeah, you could have swapped it round. That's what I always
swore it would have been the other way around. So last time we saw you in the ring was in Saudi against Liam Cameron. It was a wild old night.
Yeah, it was a madness.
You had one of those situations that can happen in boxing, but you can never really prepare for. The pair of you spilled out of the ring. You injured yourself. The fight was over, and it was scored a draw. What's life been like for you since then? Because you've had a bit of a comms blackout.
Yeah, I've just been focused on myself, really. You saw my last fight when I was, not the last fight, the fight that blew me up in a sense where I was slipping on the ropes in this stand. Everything's went 100 miles an hour. Can you come here? Can you go there? Can you do this? And I've kind of liked this time. There's been no distractions with media. It's just been me, the gym, and my coach.
Just going to have to interrupt you momentarily for the
Okay,
introduction.
sorry.
Well, again, if you're a fan of IBA boxing, a fan of Olympic boxing, this man needs no introduction. 2015 world champion, two-time Olympic champion, came away with an Olympic bronze when looking to emulate his compatriots Teofilio Stevenson and Felix Savon, losing at the semi-final stage against your common opponent Alexander Kizhniak.
That was the fight of the tournament for me.
Contest.
That was
what
great.
a fight.
Absolutely sensational. He edged out the incessant volume punching of Kizhniak, but that's the level this man brings to his craft. Undefeated as a professional, again, been boxing down in Mexico in Aguascalientes, where 2 of his 3 fights have taken place. And Andy, you were there for his Champions Night recent outing in his homeland in Havana in Cuba.
I was, and he brutalised his opponent that night. It was a great night, that, because he was on the card, 2 Olympic gold medals. Rodiel Iglesias, 2 Olympic gold medals. Julio La Cruz was on it. The new one there was Landy Alvarez was on it. Lazaro Alvarez, back at the Fabersol Stadium where they had the original World Championships in 1974. And we were at the weigh-in, and like you say, how low-key they all are.
Yeah.
They're all just stood next to each other, these lads, all 4 of them, 7 Olympic gold medals between them. Just kind of looking at their phones. One stooped down to tie the other's laces at one point because they saw they were undone. It just wasn't a thing for them at all.
Weird.
People would come up and ask for autographs, and it's like they belong to them. They belong to the fans over there. And on the other side of me were Miguel Cotto and Roberto Duran, just kind of standing there, with drinking a cup of coffee. And I was just like, it's like I'm in a dream.
Yeah, it's crazy.
This is some kind of Twilight Zone thing going on here. It was brilliant. Loved it.
And again, we opened our conversation by you explaining to us how important your seasoning in IBA and Olympic boxing was.
Yeah.
That's put you on a little bit of a fast track.
Yeah.
With that fast track comes expectations. As
Yeah.
you said, you want to be who you are,
Yeah.
which is the showmanship,
Yeah.
which is trying to demoralize and psych out your opponents.
Yeah.
What type of trajectory do you see yourself on? I'm not asking you to call anybody out, but what type of trajectory do you see yourself on? What is the future that you envision for yourself when you look ahead in your boxing career?
Still the same. World champion. I believe I got the skills, I got the tools. Just getting things right, getting the right people around me, and just cutting the distractions up.
And again, Andy was mentioning the fight where he was ringside in the venue when you had that contest with Liam
WWE?
Cameron. Yeah, two Commonwealth champ as a pro, 2009 ABA champion Sheffield. I was there to commentate on that particular amateur title win. He's had his difficulties out of the ring.
Yeah.
We know what a formidable talent he is, and now he's coming back, faced off against you next.
Yeah.
Given the circumstances in which that contest ended,
Yeah.
he's got a new promotional contract out of it, so he's done himself very well indeed.
Congratulations.
Yes, indeed. So you might be getting a Christmas card from your former opponent. But are we likely to see that contest again? Is that something that you're
I want
potentially
it.
interested in?
I think it's the right thing next. And didn't perform the best on the night, which I wanted to. But fair play to him. He's got a career off the back of it. But for me, I want to win that. At the end of the day, I've took my little time off, and I'm focused and I'm excited. Quiet them doubters.
No, I mean that's it exactly. Get you top of the card, bang out all the
That's apparently you never know what he's going to do with his promotion deal now. He might have a different route. Probably thinks I don't need that now, but I think after the back of that, the way people have been talking, it's only right. And I just want to right that wrong, show how good I am, and move on to the next.
And we saw that the contest was curtailed early. How's the body? How are you physically?
Yeah, it's good. A lot of, he threw himself. If I threw myself over the ring, I would have been broken in pieces. And the excuse of my ankle, I landed on my neck and my back. I could have easily said that, but I hit my ankle funny, went back to the emergency room, they did an MRI and an X-ray. And I don't make excuses. I went to the Olympics with a torn rotator cuff, and no one heard me mention it before. No one really heard me mention it after. So I'm not going to start, my ankle, it happened. I couldn't continue. But when I go and beat him in the next fight, I'll have a lot to say then.
Well, that's something we look forward to. Up in the ring now.
You want to say so quickly? Oh, if we wanted to say
No. I've been told that I don't know if you're aware of this, but that I think you're required for a rematch with Aran Lopez.
I've heard. I ain't got no gloves or a gum shield, but we'll get in there and see what happens. We'll get in there.
So, and in terms of, just before you go,
Yeah.
we often associate Cuba with the majestic footwork and the sharp shooting skills, but he possesses that in his locker, but he often operates as we see him now. Really efficient movement, flat-footed, and picks his punches with real precision and patience.
It's one of those because he can actually box.
Yes.
But when he's in front of you, he slows things down. I think that's his superpower. He slows things down because when I was fighting him, I was like, I'm going to hit him, but I know something hard's coming back, so you don't really want to hit him. And I think that's what makes him good. He don't need to move because he'll slow you down. Then he starts slowly breaking you down, and he can switch stance. He's got it all, really. Sometimes he starts a bit too slow and lets them get a bit too confident. But for me, he's a really good boxer.
Well, just removing the gloves, having been put through his paces by his coach under the watchful eye of Ben Whittaker, the Olympic silver medalist. Ben, thank you for joining us, man, and we'll see you throughout fight week. Thank you so much. That is 2019 IBA World Championship bronze medalist, Tokyo Olympic silver medalist Ben the Surgeon Whittaker, undefeated, and now climbing up the steps for a little bit of a face-off and shape-up with a man he knows very well indeed, having shared that Olympic final in Tokyo 3 years ago.
I love seeing stuff like this because it just shows that this is sport. This is not personal, it's sport, and that's very much how the Cubans approach it. And I think it probably is quite intimidating how at ease they are with everything. They've been in their whole lives. There's nowhere they feel more at home than in the boxing ring. It's a competition, the bell goes, you both do your best at the end. If it's close, maybe you'll get it, maybe you won't. And they're not immune to losing close decisions, Cuban fighters. They get their share and they suck it up and they carry on. And that was a great fight between those two in that Olympic final. And that fight between him and Kushitashvili in the semi-finals in Paris was absolutely supersonic. It was so good. I mean, sat at home watching it. It must have been amazing to have been there for it.
It was absolutely incredible, and as you and Ben have said, a real strong candidate for bouts of the tournament. Well, up into the boxing ring steps Yoel Finol, undefeated as a professional with a record of 3-0, having made his debut in Venezuela, where all of his 3 professional bouts have taken place. Made his debut in 2019. I was there ringside at the Vienna Park Hotel the Hilton Park Hotel in Vienna just in October, couple of months ago, and he was sensational on his IBA Champions Night debut, facing off against Samat Jaybayev of Kazakhstan, and he put on a virtuosic display, Andy, of switch hitting, sharp shooting, often out of that southpaw stance that we're seeing in proper now, but it was a wonderful performance over the course of 8 3-minute rounds. So again, no stranger to going beyond the 3-round distance of IBA tournament boxing. But what a display, and now here he is fighting for the world title against a man who has also topped the world. Remember, Yoel Finol got his bronze, got upgraded to silver after his Olympics in Rio, so come away with 2nd spot on the podium, giving you an idea of this man's caliber, and he'll be fighting over 10 threes tomorrow against Shakhobidin on Friday night.
He's packed a lot into his 27 years, Finol, hasn't he? Because he's medalled in pretty much every competition you could. Pan Am's, American Championships, Olympic Games. It's impressive. He's been at this a long time. And he's good to watch, like you say. He's a kind of mercurial fighter, good to watch. I saw him in Caracas, which would have been the fight before you saw him in Vienna, so we both had recent experience of watching him. He was up against Alexis Alvarado that night over 8 rounds, and again, he took care of business in a way that we've become used to with him. And it's a good match, this. It is a good match. You know, Zoirov, the sheer weight of medals that these two have won between them, you know, a cabinet wouldn't be enough, would it? You need a room, I think, for it. So it's a really good fight, really looking forward to it. I saw Zoirov in Serpukov in the summer, where he got a draw against a Russian fighter, Zavali. He won that fight, I thought. He just didn't get the decision. And he's a fantastically talented boxer as well. So this is what really one for the purists, I think. We'll see some absolute skills on display.
And he's been vocal on social media. He's asking for the support of all Venezuelan boxers from around the world. Remember, 5 continents being represented across the 8 bouts that we have for you on Friday night. Here's our South American representative from Venezuela. And Andy, we've talked before about World Series boxing, which we hope will be making a return to the IBA competition calendar. But he was boxing for the Venezuela Caciques back in the day, mixing it with his 3-round World Championship and Continental and Olympic events. So again, all of that seasoning, all of that pedigree has been acquired, facing off against the top operators in the world. And on Friday night, well, facing off against an Olympic champ and a world champ from the Ekaterinburg 2019 edition in Zoirov. And it's again another case of best v best with an IBA world title on the line.
It is 100%. It doesn't get too much better, to be honest. When I saw the card and you saw the matchups, you look at that and you just think that is one to really sink your teeth into, because watching these two go at it over the extended distance as well will be really, really good, because we know what they can do over a shorter duration. We're very used to that. It's always really interesting to see whether somebody physically and tactically can make the adjustment. And every top IBA fighter I've seen has been able to do it. And I think they would find the idea or the suggestion that they couldn't insulting. They find it hilarious that they're just these 3-round specialists and they're not capable of doing it any other way. I actually first saw him, or one of the first times I saw him was at the final qualifier for Rio. It was in Venezuela.
And that was the final qualifier,
it was
where
the
professionals could go there as well.
Exactly my point. And that was the one where professionals could try and qualify, and there was all that kind of ruckus about it, that huge furore about it, because people who don't really follow elite international amateur boxing were thinking, well, pros can just come back into it, dip into the Olympics, bash everybody up, nick a gold medal, stick it in their pocket and run away laughing. We knew different. 3 professionals qualified for Rio. 14 went to that qualifier. 3 got through. One was the former world champion in Hassan and Dam. And that Renrong was another one. He's another former world champion. Yep. And none of them did anything. Right. None of them medaled.
Mathieu Bordelique was the other one.
Yeah.
From France. So as you say, because it's difficult. For Renrong, he was fighting in a weight class way north of where he would be. And he's having to hold that weight for the 2-round duration. And he got taken apart, no disrespect. But he got dealt with emphatically during his Olympic debut over in Rio, because he's fighting at a heavier weight class effectively, because he would have had to hold that weight potentially for the 16-day duration of the Olympic tournament. And just to your point, you commentated on that final qualifier. I was with him when he tried to qualify at the previous one in Baku, Azerbaijan. Didn't get it right, so it was really last chance saloon. And from there he went on to get Olympic silver. Well, up into the boxing ring, to the strains of Joe Budden and Pump It Up, is Shakhobidin Zoirov. And what a resume this man brings to the boxing ring. Undefeated as a professional, having made his debut in 2019. Hasn't boxed in the conventional professional code since 2022, but he racked up a 5-0 ledger there. And as a 3-round IBA tournament boxer, the Olympic champion in Rio, the world champion in Yekaterinburg, saw him make his IBA Champions Night debut at that same event in Vienna, where Yoel Finol was boxing. He ground out a hard-fought 8-decision split decision victory over the estimable Spanish boxer Samuel Carmona. That was a terrific contest where this man's resolve was put to the test, and he came through winning a razor-thin decision. And interestingly, this fight for the IBA world title over 10 threes at 54 kilograms is a rematch of the Olympic semi-final in Rio at Rio Centro Pavilion 6. I was ringside to commentate on that tournament, and this promises to be a cracker over the 10 threes rather than the 3 threes of the Olympic semi.
I like Zorov. I just find him good to watch. He does a little bit of showboating every now and again. When I saw him in Bukov, he was hopping on one foot on occasions, a la Ben Whittaker, which is something that you can't do in elite international amateur boxing. Referees won't have it, the officials won't allow it. So he's got that kind of showmanship inside him, just like Ben has. He didn't do too much of it. He's just a very accomplished, very skilled all-round fighter. I wonder over the longer format whether he'll look to plant his feet and really try and take it to Finol, because I feel like he's got it in the locker to do that. It won't be an easy thing to do, because obviously Finol's got plenty of skill and he'll be elusive, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's what he wants to try and do, if he really does approach this in a more pro style, as we would describe it. Just slow those feet down a little bit when he can, plant them a little bit wider, really connect them to the canvas, cut that ring off, and look to bit by bit chip away, get to him. Make sure you land. You don't have to land clean, massive, heavy shots, but hit something, slow your guy down, erode that battery, and then get to him late on. I wouldn't be surprised if that's what we see from him.
And remember, he followed up, returned from the professional ranks to go to his second Olympic Games in Tokyo, where he lost in the quarterfinals against the man who came away with Olympic silver, Carlo Parlam out of the Philippines, who lost to Great Britain's Galalia Fai, who, as Ben Whittaker was talking about, has used all of that IBA and Olympic experience to make terrific strides in the professional ranks. Only 9 fights in, is now the division #1 at flyweight, having dismantled and dealt with Sonny Edwards, the former IBF world champion, on Saturday night in Birmingham. I was ringside to commentate on that tournament, but the man who Galalia Fai bested, Carlo Parlam, in the gold medal bout in Tokyo, this is who beat Shakhobidin Zorov on his quest for his second Olympic title. So again, it just gives an idea and a barometer at the level at which he is operating, in addition to his gold medal glory in Rio in 2016 and his IBA 2019 World Championship gold. He took a boxer of that caliber to deny him a place on the podium yet again.
At that level, it's just such incredibly fine margins, and that's where I think once you've done that, when you've done all of that over the 3 rounds, I think what they enjoy and look forward to about the longer format is the fact that the margins are still fine, of course, but with more rounds, you've just got more time to get into the fight. If you lose the first round, it's not the catastrophe that it can be in a 3-round fight. Every single second in those 3-round fights basically counts, whereas the tactics could be a little bit different over 10 rounds. You've got time to set things up. If you're looking to set a trap in a 3-round fight, you're going to need to execute it pretty quick. You know, you don't really have time to lay too much groundwork, whereas over 10 rounds they do, and that's the difference really. And some people look at it and they feel like they won't be able to do it because they're too versed in one format, but it's never the case. It's never the case. They relish it. They really thrive on it because they've got that base technique that allows them to keep the tempo high but without wasting any energy. And that's just such a massive key to it, isn't it? If you can stay compact, punch within the frame of your body, which is what most IBA fighters do, then you can throw punches without emptying the tank. And that's kind of a hallmark of it.
And again, there have been lots of cases of boxers meeting in 3-round contests who then go on to meet over the longer duration.
Zoira!
Joshua Guinea, White, George Groves against James DeGale countless examples. Most recently, Ryan Garcia and Devin Haney meeting in 3 rounds in IBA.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, we bring in our final public workout pairing. On Friday evening, this contest will be 8 rounds of boxing in the 86-kilogram weight division. Please welcome into the ring first an unbeaten professional with a 100% knockout ratio, 2 wins, both by knockout. He comes to us from Tbilisi, Georgia. Please welcome Georgie Jango Kushitashvili.
Over the top rope with a striking spring, Georgie Kushitashvili, the reigning cruiserweight champion from the European Championships, the 2022 champion from the edition that took place in Yerevan in Armenia, and a World Championship bronze medalist from the edition in Tashkent last year. So Georgie Kushitashvili, terrifically accomplished 3-round boxer. And again, made it through to the Olympic Games, where it took the talented Davlat Boltayev to beat him on a split over 3 rounds. Here he is, preparing to make his IBA championship debut. But again, a boxer with these credentials, no stranger to this level of competition. And what a prospect he is at and around that weight division. Tall, broad-shouldered, mobile, and a wonderful punch picker.
He is. There's something I'd really like to see in IBA pro boxing with this infrastructure. It's of Georgian fighters come through and really make a mark, because you see them in the amateurs in the 3-round format and they're good. This guy's won not everything he can win, but a lot of the things that you can win. But in pro boxing up until now, when we're covering that beat, the likes of ourselves, we see the boxing out the away corner. You see people who've really done things as an amateur just boxing out the away corner because there's just no infrastructure for them to turn pro. And a lot of them won't turn pro because they'll finish when their IBA career finishes. And it's a bit of a criminal waste, to be honest with you. And this is something that I'm really looking forward to with the development of the IBA Pro Series, because fighters from countries whereby previously there wasn't necessarily that route in, or there only was if you were right at the very top, and then you need to go to another country and try and make it there. The depth of talent is immense, and Georgie's a good example, isn't it? Because yeah, we'd see guys boxing out of an away corner, and they'll come and they'll tuck up and they'll take their 60 points to 54 defeat. You know they could have done a lot more, but those are the cards they've been dealt. Hopefully not anymore.
Indeed. And to Andy's point, such ring craft, such acumen in the boxing ring, they have that journeyman's ability to go the distance so that they can fight again the next week and earn another paycheck. And when they choose to go
And now, ladies and gentlemen, we bring in our final boxer into the ring. He is also undefeated as a professional with 6 wins against no losses, and 5 of those wins come by way of knockout. He comes to us from Rutov, Russia, by way of Vanadzor, Armenia. Please welcome Artush Hovhannisyan.
26 years of age and has won 6 fights in a row. But like some accomplished operators, including Johnny Nelson, I think Bernard Hopkins falls into that row, lost his professional debut, but has then rattled off 6 in a row. And he comes to the ring with that 7-fight record, 5 of his 6 wins coming early. 6 feet 2 inches tall is the man who resides in Russia, born in Armenia, just going through some mobility exercises up in the boxing ring. This is going to be his second outing of 2024, having fought in Kazakhstan in April. But again, Armenia and Georgia facing off in the boxing ring. And this one promises to be a fascinating encounter between 2 accomplished individuals.
It's a good division, this, isn't it? 86 kilos, because like in the pros where you get the 200-pound division, which of course is heavyweight in either boxing, what you get is big athletes, big specimens who are making weight. Basically, you speak to really good cruiserweights, whichever code it is, and that's what they say to you, isn't it? A lot of heavyweights are just lazy. They could box in their weight division, but they can't be bothered to make weight. Whereas with these guys, you've got naturally big men who do make that effort to make weight, and they are pretty frightening when you see them on fight night a lot of the time, because they are in sensational shape. And the obvious person to point to in recent times who tore it up as an IBA fighter and now as a pro is Alexander Usyk. But he boxes at 220 pounds as a professional heavyweight, so he hasn't really changed much, has he, in terms of his natural size, because he would have come down from that to make cruiserweight and then gone back up to around that by the time he got back into the ring, and that's what makes them, they're dangerous, aren't they?
And again, just speaking to the itinerant nature of this role that Andy and I are privileged to occupy, I first saw Alexander Usyk ringside 2006 European Championships in Plovdiv when he was competing as a 75 kilogram middleweight. And then 2 years later he went on and took the European title in Liverpool. I was covering Calzaghe Roy Jones in New York at that particular time, so couldn't get to see his preliminary stages. But again, it's just another indication as to how vital that seasoning is and what it allows he and his compatriot Vasyl Lomachenko to do in the professional game in such a short space of time. We've already referenced Josh Taylor, Ryan Martin, who'll be fighting on the bill Friday, his opponent. You've got all that behind you. You can put your foot on the gas and make inroads pretty quickly in the pro game.
Yeah, absolutely, and with Lomachenko and Usyk as well, what was really interesting about them was that after winning gold in London, they both stuck around for an extra year to basically to box WSB, to box those 5 rounds and give them that easier slipstream into professional boxing, which is exactly what it did
a big thank you to Artush Hovhannisyan. In Friday evening's 8-round contest in the 86 kilogram weight division. And ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the public workout. This is for the IBA Champions Night, the big show coming your way on Friday evening from the Agenda Arena, not too very far from here. It's a blockbuster show and a card of championship bouts culminating in 2 mouth-watering IBA professional world title bouts, all courtesy of the president of the IBA, Mr. Umar Kremlov. We thank you for your attendance. We thank you for tuning in on the live stream, and I'll hand you back to Ron and Andy to wrap up the show.
Oh, thank you very much indeed. Aki Kareem just concluding his Master of Ceremony duties up in the boxing ring. He'll be on hand with Michael Buffer on Friday night to introduce all of the fighters and announce all of the verdicts. So it just remains for myself and Andy to wrap things up here. We're joined once again by Radio Rahim. And again, as somebody who has covered boxing all over the world, it's your first night at one of these IBA Champions Night events, I understand. Given the caliber of boxer that's on display in terms of the medals that they won at global championships, continental championships, just explain for our viewers how different this is from the conventional professional boxing business, where talented prospects, medalists from the 3-round code are given showcase fights early on, but here we see them fighting for continental titles and world titles on the IBA Champions Night stage.
What I've heard more than anything all afternoon is undefeated and gold medalists and Olympian, and these kind of cards don't come together unless you're here at the IBA in Dubai, because a fighter of those caliber will only fight fighters who have no caliber. That's how you build a guy. That's how you build a brand and a reputation, and that's how boxing's always been done. But as we spoke earlier, boxing has a language that is universal. And here in the Middle East, and particularly with the IBA in Dubai, they're looking to put guys in tough and early. Make these guys prove themselves as they build their name and build their reputation on something solid. Having stiff competition. I think that's what we in the boxing community and the fans want more than anything else, solid fights. And that's what we're seeing here. There's nothing better than that at any level. At the championship level, you want the best fighting the best. And you know what? On the come up, we want the best come ups, fighting the best come ups, and see who can get through that bottleneck early. And what that makes for is later on in the career, all of these guys have been tested. We know they're true, and it makes for better fights all the way along.
And again, mixing our sporting metaphors for a moment, that is often what devotees and disciples of UFC often say. Throw the guys in early, a loss, losing the O isn't terminal. And that seems to be the ethos that IBA Champions Night affairs are following, because there's no protecting records and reputations. They put them in early against people who are identical themselves coming out of the opposite corner.
If there's one thing I hope this new era, which I believe is the next golden age of boxing, puts to rest, it's that this O means everything. I don't mind if your O goes to somebody who is a talented contender himself or herself. It doesn't matter if you lose, it matters how you lose. It matters whether you come back and better. It matters whether or not your career now trajectory is actually sharpened by what you had early on. You're right, the UFC has it correct. And what they also have, as we know, is a bit of a monopoly, right? They have the ability to make these matchups, but now, without really a monopoly, but with a like-mindedness with these promoters and networks willing to work together, and Saudi at the helm, and now the IBA getting involved, you can change the way the sport is perceived to need to be put forward, right? This is something that I think this age will appreciate, that as long as a fighter is putting everything out on the canvas on the night, leaves it all in the ring, you can forgive a loss because he's fighting someone who's doing the same. And in the next fight, he might do better. We're going to see a rematch of the Undisputed in just a few weeks' time, and neither one of those fighters is lesser for having lost their one defeat. What we want to see is who can come back better. Can Usyk do it again? Can Fury reclaim the mantle of the best in the UK and potentially claim undisputed if he fights Dubois? All these things are on the table because all of these fighters are fighting each other. And when it happens at this level, it only makes the top level better.
There endeth the lesson. I agree with all of that. And it was very, very well put. And that's what we will see. We will see those kinds of matchups. I did a card a few weeks ago where I think 5 out of the 8 fights were won from the away corner. That never happens on normal pro cards. That never happens. But as Raheem says, the guys in the home corner who lost, it's not terminal for them. They put up a decent display. They'll be disappointed, of course, but they'll be back. And this sport, more than any other, you're determined by how you respond to your perceived setbacks. And not everything can go your way. And if you have one of those records where you get to 20-0 but you haven't boxed anyone, you then start to believe that you're better than you are. And then when you do lose, your world comes crashing down around you. And it's really hard to recover. So ultimately, it doesn't really help anybody.
So, closing thoughts, Vandy Clark, Radio Raheem, on what has been this day of open workouts here at the Rocky Road Gym in Dubai. The fighters will be in the ring. Well, first of all, they're going to face off at the press conference. They'll have the ceremonial weigh-in, and then they'll be facing off for real on Friday night on this IBA Champions Night card. 8 bouts taking place featuring men's and women's action, and 2 IBA world titles on the line. It is action of the highest quality just remains for me, Ronald McIntosh, on behalf of Andy Clark, Radio Raheem, and the entire team that have put this live stream together, to say thank you for staying with us. Make sure you tune in for the press conference and ceremonial weigh-in tomorrow, and then check your local listings to get details of the fight time on Friday night for the IBA Champions Night Extravaganza here in Dubai. Thanks for staying with us. We'll see you again very soon. Bye for now.
Thank you.
I'm only kidding. This is all my Kremlin blocks. What the fuck is going on with the crowd? Where are all the people? And I'm saying, oh my, it's about 250, but they're all outside because it's so hot inside. Yeah.